Hello and welcome to Decision NYC with Ben Max. I'm Ben Max, your host and the executive editor of Gotham Gazette. The 2021 New York City election season is well underway and it's poised to be the most significant municipal election in decades. All of city government is on the ballot, and because so few incumbents are eligible to run for their current seats due to term limits, New Yorkers are electing many new office holders and the next roster of leadership for our city. There will be a new mayor of New York City elected here in 2021, as well as a new city controller, several new borough presidents, many new city council members. And that's not all that's on the ballot. A number of incumbents are eligible for and seeking re-election, including the city's public advocate. And there's a very crowded and competitive race for Manhattan District Attorney, and still more. Party primaries are set for June, and the general election will culminate on November 2nd. This is the first full set of municipal elections that will feature both early voting and the new ranked choice voting system. That one applies only to party primaries and special elections. We'll explain ranked choice voting in a separate show. This city election cycle would be of enormous importance under more usual circumstances, but it's unfolding at a time of great crisis for our city, raising the stakes of the decisions that you, the voter, will make. The new wave of city leadership will quite clearly make or break the city's recovery from the devastation of the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on health, family, jobs, education, the city government budget, and much more. It's also important to note, of course, that the city faced a number of crises before the pandemic, and several of those have only gotten worse. So it's an important time of choosing here in New York City, and we're pleased to bring you this new series of interviews with candidates running for mayor, other citywide offices like comptroller and public advocate, as well as interviews with candidates for other offices. And there will eventually be debates. These one-on-one conversations will help you to get to know the candidates better, learn about their backgrounds, their platforms, their vision for the city of New York. We hope this and other interviews will help you sort through your many choices and make an informed decision when it's time to vote. So today's interview, joining me by Zoom now, is Paperboy Love Prince, a Democratic candidate for New York City Mayor. Paperboy Prince, thanks for joining me.
Paper, yeah. It's our time. One love. Ben Max, MNN Gotham Gazette. What is going? New York! New York, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, Staten Island, Manhattan. We're in New York. I need the Zoom to feel like it this morning. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm amazing. I'm ready.
Good.
I'm ready. I'm excited, and we're ready to spread love.
All right. So tell people about who you are, where you come from, your background a little bit. What you're all about and who you are.
Well, one love. First off, at the top of this, I want to say thank you all for having me. I really appreciate that. And I want to say to everyone watching, right at the top, just in case you don't make it to the end, I want to say that I love you so much. I appreciate you so much. You're so important to this community. The value that you bring, the ideas that you bring, the experience that you bring is what makes New York, New York. And we need more of you. We need more love. We need more ways to connect with each other, to come together. So I want to tell you that you can do it. You can make it. I know so many people feeling like down, feeling like, things aren't going their way. I'm here to tell you that things are going to turn around for you. Just like you see these bubbles here and they float and they pop. That's how the things in your life that you want to go right are going to go. Things that may feel like they're going whichever way the winds go, and then all of a sudden, pow, it pops right when you least expect it, because that's how life is. Something amazing is coming for you. And I want to profess this to everyone watching right now. If there's one thing you remember, I want you to know that you are valuable, you are loved, and we appreciate you. This city appreciates you. Your hard work that goes unnoticed, we appreciate you. And that's a perfect way for me to lead in to what this campaign is all about. It's about spreading love and bringing people together. Something that no one else in the history of New York City politics has tried to do to this magnitude, and really focus on spreading love. A lot of times they get into, a lot of politicians and leaders, as they're called, get into logistics. They only focus on things that they feel like they can quantify with logistics. And anything outside of that, that's very kind of has already been done logistically. Anything outside of that, it's hard for them to kind of wrap their minds around accurately. And that's what we're doing. Things like mental health, things like spreading love to people and actually taking that and applying logistics and real plans to that. But to get to your question, Ben, you can also find me at Paperboy the Prince on Instagram. I'm most active on social media there, at Paperboy Prince on Twitter, paperboyprince.com. Yo, we need you to volunteer. We need you to donate. I really appreciate you. I wanted to say that just at the top so we get that out the way so we can really get, because I want to go deep. When we talk, man, I really want to go deep in this. So I wanted to get all of that stuff out the way at the beginning. But paper, yeah. I'm Paperboy Prince, Paperboy Love Prince. I'm an artist, an activist, an athlete, an entrepreneur, a friend, a street performer, a web developer, a teacher, a student, so much more, a creator. And, I'm super happy to be here. A lot of my work in New York City and across the country has revolved around spreading love and positivity and really like changing the narrative of what our life can be. A lot of people ask me, I did a rally recently that, like you mentioned earlier, I'm running for mayor as a Democrat, but I did a rally recently on Wall Street and we basically crashed a Republican rally, a young Republican rally. And I gave this riveting speech there. And afterwards, this older gentleman came up to me and he said, I liked a lot of what you were saying, but you're conservative, right? And I had to tell him, I said, look, sir, a lot of people may consider me far, far left. But a lot of my messages, we're not left, we're not right, we're up. We're trying to go upward. We're not trying to take you left and right and keep you on the same plane. We want to take you up, raise the collective consciousness of this city, of this nation, and really, change the way that people think, move, and interact with their world and their neighbors. But yeah, more about me. I've done a lot of work with the youth. I've done a lot of work. Let's bring it. Most recently, I ran for Congress in 2020. From 2019 to 2020, in New York's 7th congressional district, which covers a lot of Brooklyn, part of Queens, and Manhattan as well. So one of the few crossover districts at the time that covers multiple boroughs. And we got over 17,000 votes in the primary, which is more than any challenger has gotten in a long time in that way. And on top of that, what I'll say is, the amount of votes that we got in this primary, I would have been your congressperson for the last 25 years in this district. Last 25 years, we would have won it. Magically, they got over 3 to 4 times the normal amount that the establishment usually gets in that primary. So, but saying that to say that the people showed with their vote how ready they are to support Paperboy Love Prince and the love movement. The people showed
more Paperboy Prince. Say more about what message you were putting out there, other than the broad message of spreading love, as you said. What message are you putting out there that you think spoke to people to achieve that number of votes in your campaign for Congress, and that you're putting out into the world and to voters in your campaign for mayor?
Well, a big thing about it, Ben, is the work and the realness. They saw how real we were. They've seen me actually in the streets with the community day after day after day, and being there, talking the language, hanging out, not spending all my time doing fundraising calls, spending my time making love calls, saying, hey, how are you doing? Hanging out with the people, putting my body on the line, putting my reputation on the line for my community. We threw some of the biggest protests in this city's history. And that's just because we stepped up and did it. A lot of people remember the Black Lives Matter protests that rocked the city during the summer and, in late May leading into June. And before that, in April, I was out protesting every day. the same protest that you saw with people, with thousands of people, I started, it was just me, one other person, two other people. We started getting the word out. People saw that, it connected, it was working. This was during coronavirus, so a lot of people had to stay home, but I got in a bubble suit, right? And we talked about the issues and went in the protest. Fast forward to June, you know, we're shutting down bridges, the Williamsburg Bridge, Brooklyn Bridge. We're shutting down major intersections for justice.
What do you want to see? What do you want to see
real
happen?
quick, I want to get through this real quick. This is the important part that people need to see. You know, I'm talking about 200, 300, 400, 1,000 people in the streets. Me as a young person leading them, you know, talking to them a lot of times for hours, speaking about the changes that need to be happen and that need to happen. And people are really, you know, excited about this. And what I'll say is that a lot of the other candidates, they tweeted Black Lives Matter. They tweeted we need change. Me, myself, I was actually out there literally making the change on the front lines, organizing, creating, and the people were following me in person. So you're asking about why so many turned out to vote. They saw us in action in a real way that they've never seen any city politician even come close to. And, you know, that's exciting for a lot of people. So sorry to cut you off there. I just wanted to.
Oh, no problem at all. What's the change that you want to see, especially if we're talking in the context of a campaign for mayor? What's the change you want to see in New York when it comes to issues of policing, issues of racial justice? What is the change that you put forward when you speak to people at rallies, at protests, when you're talking about your campaign? What is the change that you want to see?
So I also want to go back to your question from before because I skipped that, and I want to do you justice, Ben Max. I want you to act, and I honestly,
it's a conversation. It's okay,
right? And I'm honestly curious because I'm curious what you think because you're entrenched in the political scene here, right?
Sure.
And have been for a while, and you know, I don't know if you watched our run for Congress at all, or kind of you know, studied that at all or saw it as it was happening. But I'm curious to know what you think, because in my opinion, I feel like our movement was one of the biggest. I feel like we're like one of the biggest movements in the city as far as like just a mix of political, cultural, and then also just real like New York City vibes. I feel like we're right at the center of that, and a lot of the other candidates weren't that, but they were still talked about a lot more in places like, you know, all different types of publications and stuff like that. And you're, you know, a editor that's kind of at the top of that. So I'm curious to know like kind of how you perceived our run and the results, and you know, what you kind of think that even means for like New York City politics.
Well, I don't want to take too much time in this interview to tell you what I think. I mean, I'll say that I of course, noted your run for Congress, watched it at least a little bit, you know, sort of tried to get a little bit of a feel for what you were talking about, why you were running, and certainly noted that you got an interesting number of votes. And I think, you know, that's why I think folks now that you're running for a different office want to hear more as you're trying to spread your message across from a congressional district now across the city, what that message is and what kind of change you really want to see in the world, especially in the city that we live in.
What I'm curious about though is like you as someone who's a journalist and even your fellow journalists, you know, and the reason this is so important because I think you are so important. And I think that local media is so important. And I think that that is how a lot of our politicians have been able to take the city away from the people, because so many of our local media organizations have closed down because of the internet and so many other types of things, you know, big conglomerates and things of that nature. I'm sure you're well aware. So the reason I'm kind of honing in on this is because, you know, back in the day in New York, the local papers were covering all the community board meetings and all of all these little political meetings that no one now is kind of focusing on. But I want to get to this because it's so important about about kind of how the system all works together. And for me, I'm not singling you out. What I'm kind of saying is, for me, I think what's remarkable about our run is we took $20, right? Because the political system, everybody talks about getting money out of politics, right? Everybody talks about all of these things. And when you see somebody actually doing it, like you said, you studied it a little bit, but I'm saying when you see somebody from, the people, from the core, take a $20 bill and get over 14,000, 17,000 votes against a entrenched 28-year incumbent spending over $400,000, to me, that, and this is answering your question, to me, that is the type of people that we need running the city, that know how to take a little and have a massive impact. $20. No one else could do that. Name your favorite candidate. No. Honestly, name your favorite candidate. They wouldn't be able to do that. And I'm not saying that, listen, I'm not saying that as a way to like call anybody out. My thing of saying is saying how up against the odds, how much the people are trying to show that they support in a real way. Because we're in a pandemic right now. It's weird for me to ask people to come out of their pockets in one of the greatest economic crises that this city has ever seen. For me to tell them to donate to a political campaign, when I know to the average person living in a housing project, the average person that might even be a gentrifier, their income has taken such a hit that donating to a political campaign is so low on the totem pole. So then the rich, the elites, end up once again choosing who runs this city. The rich and elite end up having the time to even look at a mayoral race this early on and not have to focus on who's going to take care of my kids, who's going to, pick up my son from practice and all this. So for me, that's why I kind of, step back and look at these things from a full view, because the average New Yorker, they're looking at things from, a full view. So I know we're going around a bit there, but I just wanted to ask, you're a worthwhile person to ask questions, right?
I think almost anything that you have to say or that we discuss is important for voters to hear. And that's why we have this good extended time together. So don't worry about where you take the conversation. For the most part, I'm sure there might be a couple third rails, but for the most part, I think it's good for people to hear how you think. And that's the purpose of these conversations, is to hear what you're all about, what you think the direction of the city needs to be. And that's what I want, I want you to tell people more, is a little bit about what that vision is. What kind of city do you want? What kind of city, if people vote for you, would you be trying to achieve for New Yorkers, especially for those New Yorkers you mentioned that don't have a lot of time to be focused on a political campaign right now. They have other issues. There's so many people in New York City who've lost work, who've obviously been impacted in terms of their health by COVID, who've lost loved ones. So there's a lot of people hurting in the city, and that adds, as I said in the intro, as to why this
people to have the best city ever. I want people to have the best city ever.
All right, what does that look like?
I'm talking about.
What does that mean?
I'm talking about a utopia. I'm talking about a place that is the most. We got to bring New York City into the future, into a real imaginative future. And I told you before, we're not going left, not right, but upward. We're actually looking to build a city in the sky, actually do the first ever sky building in New York City, build a city in the sky.
This is actual sky building, or that's a metaphor?
This is actual sky building, right? Because you see these futuristic plans of what the future is going to look like. I'm talking about, let's actually build that. And one of the things I talk about, and I spend a lot of time with architects, is actually creating cooler buildings, better infrastructure. A big part of what makes a city, a big part of what makes a time is the architecture and what kind of your world surroundings look like. That matters to people. And that even brings me to a lot of my policy and why you even see the way that I dress and present, because we want to have a city that stimulates your mind, that stimulates your heart, that actually, makes you want to create, that makes you excited to go outside, not dreary. A lot of people have seen the effects of that. If you, go to many of the housing projects in this city, they're not built in a way that is expanding people's minds. They're not built in a way that inspires creativity, that inspires love. So first, to wrap it, the aesthetics of the city changing that in a way that is even more aesthetically pleasing, that's even more beautiful. I feel like focusing on that will do a lot to help revive the culture of New York and even add some new culture to do it. And I feel like there's no one running for mayor who's better to do that than me. Also, a big thing that I want to say that I feel like is one of my coolest plans that I want to talk about is to turn Nycha into mansions. Everyone talks about revitalizing Nycha and housing projects and doing this and that. And my idea is to completely flip it on its head and turn Nycha into mansions, make them literal mansions. Let's try that and see, what that looks like after 20, 30 years of having mansions that are our housing projects for the people instead of, the cheapest possible buildings that we can build. So I also wanted to run through my platform. You asked me before to give you a quick rundown of what it is.
Sure, but real quick, I have to ask about this mansions idea.
Yeah.
What's the what is a? I mean, if you have hundreds, sometimes thousands of people living in a Nycha building or complex, how do they all live in a mansion? You're talking about an apartment building, but a sort of reimagined apartment building? Or are you talking about everybody in one large home? What does that actually mean when you say mansion?
When I mean is an actual mansion, I mean like.
Well, when I think of mansion, I think of a really big house that has different entrances perhaps, but people are sort of living together communally.
Okay, so say your favorite singer or celebrity is, I don't know, you seem like are you into Bob Marley? Or what's that album you got behind you?
Nina Simone.
Perfect, Nina Simone. So let's say Nina Simone. No, that's amazing. Wow, that's great. I have some amazing album behind me too. Smokey Robinson, Tina Marie, the Isley Brothers, the Jacksons. Okay, so let's say this is probably a bad example. We'll just run with it. Michael Jackson's house, right? I want everybody to have a Michael Jackson level house that lives in Nycha. We need to invest in the people this much and show that we care this much, because right now what's being done is the bare minimum. It's and we need to really flip the way that things are being done. Again, no one else will try that because they'll say, how can people do it? How can they live in there? So my idea for that, and I would love to get the people's perspective as well, that will actually be living in these buildings, right? It's not just like Paperboy's ideas and plans.
We have only 5 minutes left, and I have two more questions that I really want to ask you, but you wanted to also get into some of your policies and platforms. So why don't you take a minute on that? And then I have two more questions I really want to ask you.
Okay, great. Wow, 5 minutes left. This is
I know, it goes, 30 minutes goes by fast. I know.
So I'll say, so about our policy platform, universal basic income, that is, we want to give $2,000 a month to everyone that wants it, and healthcare for all, true healthcare for all, that is not just sick care, but that is healthcare that's focusing on mental health, that's focusing on preventative healthcare, spreading love, as an actual policy. So what that means is a love center on every block where you can go to get a hug, where you can go to get a kiss if you need a kiss, where you can go to talk to somebody, to be your friend, where you can meet your neighbors, where you can learn new things, where you can learn new languages, where you can eat foods from different cultures. We're gonna have love centers that actually bring people together, because they showed us, Ben, with coronavirus, that they know how to separate us. If they want to separate us and keep us away from each other, they can. They have the power to do that. They can tell us to stay at home forever, and that is what they can do. But they never tell us, hey, let's come together. Let's have love centers. Let's bring each other together. Let's have more ways to come together. So love centers. So we got universal basic income. We have healthcare for all, not just sick care, healthcare for everyone. Spreading love is an actual policy. A greener New York. I'm talking about more trees, more plants, more life than you've ever seen before. More futuristic schools as well. So greener New York, futuristic schools, and then housing for all. We have to end homelessness. We have to ensure a home, a house, a bed for everyone that is in this city, and as well as canceling the rent for those businesses and families that have been affected by the current pandemic. And you asked me about my policing policy as well. You know, I want to replace the police. Our goal is to abolish the police and take about 2 to 5 years to roll out a plan to fully abolish the NYPD and replace them with a love team that focuses on spreading love and positive reinforcement instead of negative reinforcement and terrorizing specific communities. And we think that, you know, by that, along with other policies hoping to, you know, address a lot of the social issues we have, it'll be a great thing for everyone.
So I don't think we'll have time for both my questions, but one of my questions is, as an artist, as a performer, what do you think New York City needs to do to support artists and performers? What kind of policy, what kind of atmosphere should the current mayor, the current leadership, and if you were to be the next leadership, what would you do to support artists and performers?
And what was your second question? Because out of the two, I'm curious, and I'll answer.
We only have one more minute, and then I will have to end the interview, even though we could talk for a lot. My second question was going to be, what would you say to people who say that running for office is a way to help you sell more albums? So you can combine.
Perfect. I'm glad you asked that because that's the one to answer. So if you look at all of the other people that are running, I'm already more known in the community than they are. A lot of them, most of them, save maybe one or two names, there's all these fake, they're not more known in the community than we are, especially here in Brooklyn. And the reason I'll say that is this: they're doing it to help them sell more books, help them get their name out there, help them get a better promotion or anything like that. For me, I don't need this. I'm actually bringing something to the mayoral race. They're the ones siphoning and taking away from it. For me, I'm bringing real energy to it. And actually only 6% of people are even showing up to vote in our primaries because we have the same old boring politician types that are luring everyone to sleep and making them not want to get civically engaged. So for me, I'm actually adding and bringing my own people into this game. So for me, I'm not trying to use the people that are the average voter isn't even my target demo, right? And I love them. And yes, I want to sell more albums so we spread more love and all of that. But the idea for me is actually bringing new energy, new life into this. While these people, you know, no one is checking for them at all.
I do have to leave it there. Don't worry, we're checking on all the other candidates and holding them to their promises and their backgrounds. Paperboy Love Prince, I appreciate the time. Paperboy Love Prince is running for mayor. Thank you for joining me.
Paper, yeah, it's our time.
And thank you for watching Decision NYC with Ben Max. Key decisions are coming up for New York City voters in the June primaries and fall general election. There's a lot on the line for New York City. I hope this conversation has been helpful to you. I'm Ben Max. See you next time.